Bina.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our channel, Elementary, my dear,
where we make nutrition science easy for you to digest.
Today, we're answering Reddit's nutrition questions again.
I'm so excited. I had so much fun last time. R/nutrition.
Honestly, people on Reddit have some tough questions.
Honestly, there are some ones where I'm like, oh.
Tough questions, and I think sometimes it's questions that, like, there is no answer
There's no answer
for.
to, yeah.
With that being said, there are questions that we do have answers for.
We're gonna start off with one here.
Refined sugar bad equals white potato bad? Question mark?
Starchy veg, like white potato, sweet potato, have higher GI, so that's glycemic index, than refined sugar. Many sweet fruits have very high GI, many higher than table sugar, such as watermelon with a GI of 80. Sugar only has a 65 GI. So, are all of these foods unhealthy considering they spike 20 to 30% harder than table sugar? So I guess we should start off by talking about what glycemic index actually is. I know it's something that we've brought up a few times in some of our other videos. Basically, glycemic index is a measure of your blood glucose response to eating different foods. You know, this has been looked at like quite a bit over the past few decades, but I would say that the biggest application of it is actually in the field of diabetes.
The way they determine the glycemic index value is they take, different carbohydrate-rich foods, 50 grams of carbohydrates worth of each type of food, and then see how people's blood sugar response changes as a result of consuming it. Basically works out to a value between 0 to 100. 100 being either white bread or glucose. And everything is kind of relative to that.
That kind of brings us into this question. This person is asking about refined sugar or table sugar, which is sucrose. Sucrose is a science word for having a glucose molecule and a fructose molecule attached together, and that is what we know as just like white sugar. And I think it would be very surprising to a lot of people, but sucrose actually has a moderate glycemic index. The reason is that sucrose is half fructose, and fructose does not really lead to a high blood sugar response. So it's really only the glucose that's in there that's pulling its weight.
In terms of the practical value of the glycemic index, it's often used in diabetes care because people that have diabetes have to really keep a close eye on their blood sugar levels. So having, a reference of what's considered high GI or medium GI or low GI can be useful so that they can make sure that they're eating foods in such a way that their blood sugar levels are not spiking and dropping dramatically. And I think that context where, the concept of GI is actually very useful has somehow, it's been pulled out of that context. And I think a lot of times people feel like, oh, if something is high GI, it's automatically bad for you.
And I think that actually has a lot to do with the insulin hypothesis. And we did a video about that probably about a year ago. I'll see it on foods like the GI amount on food, and this will say this is a very low GI food. And I think that the implication the marketers are trying to get to is that low GI is healthy.
When it comes to things like sweet fruits, like that's being mentioned as question, things like watermelon, I think even carrots are considered high GI, ripe bananas, etc. Because the way that the GI value is determined is by taking 50 grams of carbohydrates worth of each type of food. When you think about something like a watermelon, to achieve that 50 grams of carbohydrates, you'd have to eat a lot of watermelon.
Like a lot of watermelon.
A lot of watermelon. And most people just aren't going to eat that much watermelon. Plus, watermelon has a lot of other micronutrients and a lot of other valuable things to offer. It's a very hydrating food. So even though watermelon has a higher GI value than sucrose, it's still more nutrient dense.
Well, because also sucrose, that is pure carbohydrate. So if we're be comparing 50 grams of sucrose to probably a whole watermelon, and we're looking at things like satiety, other nutrients that are given, it's not even a comparison. This is kind of where the GI has its limitations, and I know that there's another concept called GL, which is glycemic load, where they account for the portion size as well, and then you'd get a watermelon would actually have a very low glycemic load for the amount that people typically eat.
So are all these foods unhealthy considering they spike 20 to 30% harder than table sugar? No.
Eat your fruits. If you also ask about potatoes.
I mean, that's the same thing though, right?
It is the same thing.
And potatoes are really satiating and have potassium, and they do have a lot more nutrients. I don't know why they got such a bad rap. And they are very satiating.
Honestly, if they're not fried, they're very satiating. Yeah. Mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, roasted potatoes, very filling.
People just hate on potatoes.
But they're delicious.
They're so delicious, and they are nutrient dense. Okay. Next question. The title is there any difference between vitamin and nutrient supplements, like pills, versus getting them from real foods? Question, for example, let's say someone wanted to get more fiber. Would it matter if they got fiber from whole foods or if they just took a supplement for it? And does the same thing apply for stuff like vitamin D, sitting in the sun daily versus taking a supplement?
I've seen a lot of questions like this recently. A lot of interest in supplements recently as well.
I think that might be because trying to eat in a nutritiously sound way can feel overwhelming. And to be fair, I think it can take a lot more intentional and conscious effort. So I think the idea of just being able to take a pill and then like not having to worry about your nutritional adequacy sounds great.
The bad news is it sounds great, but it is not really the same. And there's many different reasons for this. Something called bioavailability, how much you can absorb from something. Different foods have different bioavailabilities of nutrients, but also when you are consuming supplements, your body is not going to absorb all like 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C because it doesn't have the number of like either enzymes or receptors or whatever it is to absorb all that at once. So you kind of have like a cap of how much. And I think that if someone was taking supplements for things, they might not realize that. And so they'd be like, oh, I'm getting all of my vitamin C from this, so I don't even know to worry about vitamin C, for example.
Another thing to note is that a lot of times when we think about how much of a vitamin or mineral we need, we often use the RDAs as a reference, which, for all different ages and life stages and the two sexes, it gives a recommendation for how much of a certain nutrient to consume. However, the way that those numbers were determined were based on how much you would need to avoid certain adverse health outcomes. It's not actually based on how much you would need for optimal health. So even something like vitamin D, the way they determined that value, how much you would need to preserve bone health, basically. But we know that vitamin D is necessary for so many other functions in our body, including things like the immune system. So I would say we don't actually know how much optimal vitamin D you would need in order to actually be healthy in the long term.
If you were, let's say, trying to supplement all of your nutrients or most of your nutrients from dietary supplements, you might be missing out on some of those nutrients that are available in foods. And it's actually very possible that there are nutrients that we don't know about or we don't have recommendations for because you can live without them, but they might be necessary to be like optimal health.
And I think one thing that we've seen through research is that when you think about whole foods, it does seem like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So we might think like, oh, this food has these nutrients, these specific micronutrients, and you might just try to kind of supplement with the equal amounts of those nutrients. But it doesn't seem like in practice that would actually result in the same health outcome. And we've seen that with things like omega-3. It seems like people that eat omega-3 rich foods, there's certain positive health outcomes for things like mental health, but just supplementing with it may not actually have that effect, which I think just highlights that even though we might know some of the physiological mechanisms that might be leading to certain outcomes, I don't think we know all of it. I don't think we understand how much the entire food matrix actually plays into our overall health.
Exactly, and it might even be, okay, people who eat fatty fish have better health outcomes because the interplay of the protein from the fish and the omega-3s together leads to the specific health outcome. But then we don't see the same with other high protein foods, so we don't get into that. And that was just an example that I made up. I don't know, I just made it up. But
But it's true. It's hard to artificially mimic that because I don't think we fully understand how everything is working with each other. Even with bioavailability, for a lot of different foods, the entire package that the nutrient comes in actually a lot of times is what helps with the absorption.
But I will say, supplements are very beneficial and there definitely are times where they're very useful. For example, this person gave the example of a fiber supplement. And we know, 95% of people, I think in Canada and very similar numbers in the United States are not meeting their fiber recommendation. So is it going to hurt you to have a fiber supplement? Probably not, but I wouldn't rely on a fiber supplement as my only source of fiber.
Same with vitamin D as well, sitting in the sun daily versus taking a supplement. Like Canada, vitamin D access through sunlight is hard to come by for a significant part of the year. So oftentimes taking a supplement is probably a good idea. So our point is there absolutely is a place for supplements. It definitely provides a lot of value, and especially, if you are finding that your diet is inadequate in something or you're deficient in something, supplements can absolutely help bridge that gap. This is kind of a cliche thing to say, but it's a supplement. It is meant to supplement your diet.
I feel that's the only cliche. I feel like if someone's not a dietitian, that's not cliche. I think regular people are like, true.
It's not meant to be the diet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.
On to the next. This one I'm excited for.
This one stresses me out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you want to read it?
All right. The title is, Will There Ever Be a Pill That Renders All Organic Compounds Unmetabolizable? This person says a nice picture. Picture this. It's the year 2050. You're in a state of nutritional flow, hitting your macro splits to the decimal, in parentheses, okay, maybe the tens place, when all of a sudden, a friend calls you to go out to an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet. You instantly despair, worrying about the number on the scale the following day. But then you remember you have a 2-hour caloric void pill in the cupboard. You quickly pop one down, reveling in the knowledge that your twilight extravaganza will now cause no harm whatsoever to your body compositional status. How realistic is this scenario? Is it biologically infeasible? If not, would it be too dangerous to ever produce? I just think of the myriad of applications this could have in my life. Chocolate bar, anyone?
This question is so alarmingly concerning. First of all, I would say the question, would it be too dangerous to ever produce? Absolutely.
Yes.
Even if the science was there, which I feel like it wouldn't be hard to make this
It
pill.
wouldn't be hard. You could have like something that inactivates all the enzymes or something.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think it would be hard to achieve this, but I don't think it would ever get approved.
Absolutely not.
Because it would be so dangerous. People could so easily abuse this. Yeah, you could just
take it all the time.
Take it all the time and literally starve yourself to death. Even though you're eating. Again, like we talked about, when food is in your digestive tract, technically your body's not using it. It's not actually going to provide energy or be stored as energy or give you the micronutrients, and none of that when it's in the digestive tract. So basically this person's asking, is there a way to like eat food but then take a pill so that it just like stays in your digestive tract and your body like doesn't
the first point
to.
I'd like to make though is, if this did exist, you have the most disgusting diarrhea.
Yeah.
The most nastiest diarrhea ever. You would probably be dehydrated from the amount of diarrhea. When you have like whole molecules and like big chunks, it causes, because of chemistry or osmolarity, osmosis, causes a bunch of water to go into your digestive tract, and you would just be absolutely on the toilet to almost a dangerous level, I would say.
The motivation behind this question is basically the concern that maybe having a slightly more indulgent meal would result in changes to body composition the next day. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the impact of one meal.
Honestly, even if it's all you can eat sushi and you are going to town on this all you can eat sushi, it is not going to have a significant impact on your body composition or your body weight in the long term.
Oh, he's just concerned about the next day.
For the next day.
I mean, the next day, it very well could be higher. I think a lot of it is because of like sodium and water retention and maybe just being bloated. And I think that can be alarming for a lot of people. If you one night you have a lot of like high sodium foods, then maybe you would look a little bloated the next day, possibly just from water retention. And I think that can be concerning for people because maybe that looks like you legitimately gained a lot of fat during that time.
That's not how things work.
That's literally not what happens. Even, I would say like, even if like for a week, like you go on vacation and you're just like eating more than you normally do, maybe you're relaxing more than you normally do. Again, you might feel like the number of the scale might have gone up a little bit and you might feel like you look puffier or something. There's a very good chance that most of that, I'd say more than 50% of that is just water retention.
In the very short term, there's very little you can do to change your body composition.
Either way, right? Like, even I think sometimes like, you're like, oh, I had a salad yesterday. Why did I not lose 5 pounds? Our bodies like things to stay the same. Like a lot of the functions that are within us is literally there to try to keep things as same as possible.
And I'd say honestly, overall, this post as a whole kind of like rings a few like little alarm bells.
Every half a sentence there's like a new issue, right? Yeah. Firstly, he's saying that you're in a state of nutritional flow, hitting your macro splits to the decimal. Even labeling that as nutritional flow, I don't know, the word flow, I don't like it.
First and foremost, the state of the science is that there is not a macros. Like if you look at they call them AMDR, so acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges, they're very, very large. Research shows is the amount of each macronutrient, so that's carbohyrates, fats, and protein that you need to have so you're not ill. And those are very, very large. I think that this just shows that people don't really have a good understanding of like okay, what exactly do macronutrients do in your body? Then also how your needs change. And as of right now, as far as I know, there's not really a way to tell an individual, you need this amount of macronutrients at like this specific time, because even a slight movement changes your fuel utilization in your body. So if I stand up from this chair, it's going to change my fuel utilization. So there's just not a way to do this. And thinking about this so much, I just think it's harmful and might lead to disordered eating for something that's not backed by science.
To unpack that a little further, I know that there are like apps and websites where you can put in your weight and weight change goals, body composition goals, and it'll tell you like, oh, try to eat these many grams of protein, this many grams of carbs and fat and whatever. But I think the point you're trying to make is that whatever formula or equation is like behind that, it is a very, very rough estimation based on data collected probably like decades ago. How relevant is that for you as an individual? The whole point is that we can't know unless you go through extensive testing, but it's still going to be a rough estimate. And like you said, it's going to change day to day depending on how active you are and just natural fluctuations. This idea of like your friend inviting you out to an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet and the next phrase is you instantly despair.
That's so sad.
I love sushi.
If you find yourself in a situation where the thought of how much you're going to eat is causing you like emotional distress, like that is like a major red flag for something like disordered eating or an eating disorder. So if that is something that you find yourself thinking about, is like, oh no, like this social event where I'm going to have to eat is causing me mental distress or despair. This person was obviously using very creative, like flowery language, but like if that is the case for you, please go talk to either a mental health professional or a dietitian, or talk to a GP who can maybe get you in touch with some of those resources.
I mean, ultimately the question is like, is this, first of all, biologically feasible? I feel like it is biologically feasible.
I think you would cause like severe damage to yourself. I'd say it's biologically feasible. I don't know if it would be like specifically 2 hours. I think it would cause terrible, both like for the individual and then also for societal, like have terrible implications.
Okay, now that I'm sufficiently disturbed by this question, shall we call it a day?
Let's call it a day. To recap, fruits are good for you. Supplements can't replace food. Go enjoy food with people that you like. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit the notification bell so you never miss one of our videos. And follow us on our Instagram and our TikTok.
Thank you for watching. Bye.